An 85-year-old woman in Tennessee named Astrid became a multimillionaire overnight after winning a $500 million lottery jackpot. However, her road to richness was not all completely smooth. Her story reminds us that in order to win the lottery, there are two crucial requirements. The first and most obvious necessity is a lot of luck. The second requirement is just as important, but much less often mentioned: getting organized. Astrid's story began when getting in line for a lottery ticket at her local supermarket. The woman ahead of her decided to let her cut in front of her to pay. This woman was also planning on buying a lottery ticket. Had she not given Astrid her spot in the line, the lottery money would have been hers. On the day that the winners were announced, Astrid realized she had won. She could not contain her excitement. She danced with joy all around her house and jumped on the phone to tell her closest relatives what had just happened. The next morning, Astrid woke up and prepared to go claim her prize money, but suddenly realized that she could not remember where she had placed her ticket. Given that her memory was no longer as sharp as it used to be, she searched and searched around her messy house for hours to no avail. She had absolutely no recollection of where she might have stored or dropped the ticket. Astrid had been given 30 days to claim her prize, or else it would be canceled. For 27 days her schedule was dedicated to searching every surface and square foot of her house for the missing ticket. With only 3 days left, she decided to finally call her daughters for help. She had been too embarrassed to call them from the beginning because her house was so messy, but now had no other choice. Figuring that helping their mother find the ticket would probably secure at least an extra $1 million for them, all 3 of Astrid's daughters immediately sped over to her house. Within the first half hour of searching, the youngest of the daughters hollered, "I found it!" It turned out Astrid had left it in a dish cabinet. "Oh, thank you, daughter," Astrid cried. "I owe you so much." Her daughter's smile glistened with pride as her 2 sisters scowled at her from the next room. For most people, an ideal morning might consist of waking up to the warm sun creeping in through the bedroom window, along with the cheerful chirping of the birds from a nearby tree. Sadly, this is not the case for Michael, a part-time student that works late nights as a warehouse manager. Michael gets home around 2 a.m. every night and heads straight to bed to get as much sleep as possible until his classes start at 10 a.m. However, for the past week, Michael has had a new alarm clock that he unfortunately has no control of. It is an energetic, loud mockingbird that has decided to make the tree outside Michael's window his new home. Each morning, the bird begins singing as loud as possible at exactly 5:55 a.m. and does not stop until late into the night. Most city birds begin the day with sweet, gentle chirps that can barely even be heard indoors. But the sounds of mockingbirds are very distinct and consist of various noises that the mockingbird hears and then imitates. This can include chirps from other birds, or even car alarms and school bells. After 1 week of losing sleep as the result of the bird noises, Michael decided to do something. "Go away," he screamed out of his window. When that didn't work, he started throwing things at the tree to try to scare the bird away. This only made the bird get even louder. As a final resort, Michael phoned his local animal control and requested to get somebody to remove the bird from the area. "We can't do that," replied the animal control specialist. "Mockingbirds are a valued feature of North America's wildlife and are protected by many laws. You should consider yourself lucky to have one so close to home. Just enjoy the beautiful sounds of nature." Furious, Michael hung up the phone and threw himself on the couch, dozing off into the deepest sleep he had ever experienced all week. Only 5 minutes later, he awoke to a thunderous caw-caw coming from outside. On December 26, 2004, a 10-minute-long earthquake with a 9.3 magnitude occurred in the Indian Ocean. This massive earthquake, which is the third strongest ever recorded in history, triggered various powerful tsunamis that reached over a dozen countries' shores. Nearly 230,000 people were killed by the catastrophe, and hundreds of thousands of others ended up injured or missing. In the midst of all the devastation caused by this disaster, many amazing and inspiring survival stories have emerged. One of the most extraordinary of these is the story of a young girl named Wati. The tsunami struck her hometown of Aceh when she was only 8 years old. Like so many others, the powerful waves separated her from her family, and she ended up being washed into an unknown town. After many years of searching for her, her family gave up and assumed that she had died after being swept away. Miraculously, Wati was returned to her parents 7 years later, at the age of 15. According to Wati, she had been adopted by a stranger who found her on the streets after the tsunami. Although the woman took her in to live with her, she forced Wati to beg on the streets and would often beat her if she did not make enough money. The girl had tried to find her family by asking for help from strangers, but did not remember the names of her parents and could only vaguely remember that she had a grandfather named Ibrahim. Finally, one day, a cab driver who heard Wati's story happened to know an old man with that name in a nearby town and decided to take her to him. Although the old man did not recognize her at first, he took Wati to see his daughter. "When I saw my mother, I knew it was her," said the 15-year-old. "I just knew." The parents were able to confirm that it really was their daughter based on a scar and birthmark on the girl's hip. This miraculous story is unfortunately one of the only confirmed reunions among families that were separated by the disaster. It was Saturday morning. Mary walked out of her house with $20 in her pocket and a spirit full of optimism. She had spent the previous night in front of her television set watching a reality show that followed lucky people who found amazing things at their local thrift shops. All of these people had bought seemingly ordinary items for extremely low prices and ended up discovering that their items were actually very valuable treasures. After having spent 5 consecutive hours watching other people's experiences, Mary was determined to give bargain hunting a try in hopes of finding something that would make her rich. One of her favorite stories from the show was of a man who had purchased a copy of the Declaration of Independence, thinking it was a cheap replica for only $2. He ended up discovering that the print was actually one of only 200 official copies of the Declaration of Independence commissioned by John Quincy Adams in 1820. The man ended up making $477,650 after selling it. As Mary walked into her local thrift shop, she tried recalling what all the people in the reality show had looked for. The most common items that people got rich from were paintings, and so she headed straight to the home decorations aisle. Once there, she couldn't decide which looked most expensive. They actually all seemed pretty ugly to her. "Excuse me," Mary said to an elderly woman walking by. "Which painting do you think could make me richer?" Confused, the old lady quickly pointed at one and walked away. The painting the old lady had pointed at was of a cat collage with almost 20 different cat faces jumbled atop of one another. Definitely not my first choice, thought Mary. However, she trusted Destiny's decision and bought the painting for $5. After putting it up online, she began receiving dozens of emails asking if the picture frame displayed came with the painting. In order to see what all the buzz about the frame was about, she took it to an antique store and asked if there was anything special about the frame. "Of course, it is special," remarked the clerk at the store. "Its wood and age make it at least $25,000. Mary ended up selling the frame for $30,000. A few days later, the buyer returned the ugly painting to her through the mail. Winter was approaching. Jason was excited for the coming season. It was his favorite time of year. He loved the cold weather and snow. Jason lived in New York. During the winter, it would snow in New York. He always played in the snow, even as an adult. Jason would gather his family and friends at the park where they had snowball fights. It was a lot of fun. His favorite holiday, Christmas, occurred in winter. This was another reason why winter was Jason's favorite season. Every year, he bought presents for his family and friends. Jason loved seeing the look on their faces when they unwrapped their Christmas presents. It was better to give than to receive, Jason thought. Jason loved everything about Christmas. He enjoyed caroling. He loved singing Christmas music. He loved kissing his wife under the mistletoe. He loved drinking sweet eggnog. Jason sometimes even dressed up as Santa Claus for fun and entertained his nephews. Winter also came at the end of a year. New Year's Day would come after Christmas. Jason also loved this holiday. It was a day to celebrate the new year to come, while reflecting on the past one. Jason always made New Year's resolutions. Every year he made a new resolution. This year he promised to go skydiving. Last year he promised himself to lose 20 pounds. Jason always kept his New Year's resolution. He lost 20 pounds in 3 months. This year was no exception. He planned to sign up for skydiving lessons in January of next year. Jason could not stop thinking about winter. He could not wait for it to come. It was going to be the best winter yet. Jason needed to wait 5 more months because it was barely mid-July. For the past week, Elizabeth would come home from work and discover that her apartment smelled like cigarette smoke. She did not know where the smell was coming from. Elizabeth didn't smoke. No one else had the key to her apartment to smoke inside while she was at work. The smell of smoke especially bothered her because she had asthma. One day Elizabeth stayed home from work because she was expecting a package. When she woke up that morning, the apartment smelled fine. At 1 in the afternoon, Elizabeth went into the kitchen to make a sandwich for lunch. That was when she noticed the smell of cigarette smoke. She called the building superintendent. By the time he arrived at Elizabeth's apartment, the whole place smelled like cigarette smoke. The super told Elizabeth he was pretty sure the smoke was coming through the vents from her new downstairs neighbor. The neighbor was a smoker. The super told Elizabeth there was nothing to be done. The building was really old, and the vents couldn't be sealed. It was also perfectly legal for the downstairs neighbor to smoke in his apartment. He suggested that Elizabeth buy an air filter and see if that would help. Elizabeth bought an air filter but didn't find it to be enough. Her asthma was getting worse. Her clothes and furniture were beginning to smell like cigarette smoke, too. Elizabeth decided to go downstairs and talk to the neighbor. She was going to ask him not to smoke in his apartment. Elizabeth knocked on the door. When he opened the door, a huge wave of cigarette smoke came out. Elizabeth began coughing violently. The neighbor gave Elizabeth a disgusted look. "Are you trying to get me sick?" the neighbor asked her. Elizabeth couldn't believe what he was saying. "No, but you are," she said. Ron was excited to show his wife Debbie what he had bought at the home improvement store. Debbie, however, was not impressed when she saw the big black plastic bin. She thought it was a garbage can. "We have a garbage can already. Why did you get another one?" Debbie asked. She seemed annoyed. Ron explained that it was not a garbage can. It was a compost bin. Ron explained that a compost bin was a place where they could put any organic waste, like fallen leaves, grass clippings, and fruit and vegetable peels. "Why can't we just throw that in the trash?" Debbie asked. She really didn't want extra work for herself. Ron explained that it was good for the environment. About 30% of all garbage in the United States is made up of waste from food and yards. Not only would they produce less garbage, they would also make compost, which was rich soil. It would help Debbie's flowers. She could have the beautiful garden she always dreamed of. Ron explained that little by little, inside the bin, the food scraps and green waste would create a pile. The pile would naturally break down. "Where are we keeping this pile?" Debbie asked. Ron said that the bin would go in the backyard. Debbie wasn't convinced. She was worried about rats and roaches. Ron explained that as long as they didn't put any meat scraps or oily items in the compost bin, then rats wouldn't be a problem. Roaches, however, were a natural part of the materials breaking down. Ron was especially excited about what he bought to put in the compost bin. He pulled out a small box and gave it to Debbie. She opened it and screamed before dropping the box on the floor. The box was filled with worms. Jamie, a new immigrant, was attending his daughter's first performance in a school play. His daughter, Carol, was 5 years old. She was a kindergarten student at the local public school. Carol did not have a very big role in the school play. She was playing a rain cloud in a play about the drought in California. Carol had one line. Her line was, "I'm sad enough to cry about how dry the state is." Jamie and his wife made sure to arrive early so they could get a good seat in the auditorium. They secured seats in the front row. Before the show began, the school principal made an introductory speech. The speech was about how hard the students and teachers worked together to make the play possible. At the end of the speech, the principal said, "Let's give the school staff a hand." Jamie, whose English was not very good, stood up when the principal said this. He knew that when people said to give someone a hand, they meant they needed help. Jamie always wanted to help, especially at his daughter's school. Jamie thought maybe they needed help backstage. Jamie's wife put her arm in front of her husband. "Where are you going?" she whispered. "They need a hand," Jamie whispered back. His wife explained that to give someone a hand could also mean to applaud them. "They don't need help, they just want us to clap," Jamie's wife said. Jamie felt a little embarrassed. He sat back down and began clapping along with the rest of the audience. Jamie thought to himself that someone needed to give the English language a hand. How could one phrase mean two different things? He meant the English language needed help. Donald had a rough morning. He had an argument with his wife, so he thought it would be a good idea to finish a 6-pack of beer and a handful of prescription pain pills. This would have been fine if he stayed inside his house. Instead, drunk and high, Donald began to harass his next-door neighbor. First he banged on his neighbor's door, then he broke the glass panel of a porch light. Finally, he ripped the light's wires out of the wall. That was the last straw. The neighbor called the police. The police came and arrested Donald for public intoxication and disturbing the peace. Donald was taken to a nearby jail. His stay only lasted a few hours. As soon as he was more sober, the police released him. Apparently, Donald wasn't quite sober enough, though. When he was released, Donald realized he was pretty far from his home. He didn't feel like walking almost 2 miles, so he called his friend from the jail to come get him. But Donald was getting impatient. When a woman got out of her car in the parking lot, he tried to get in. The woman screamed for help. Donald screamed, "But this is my car." The woman kept screaming, and Donald got out. Then he thought it would be a good idea to take the bus home. A deputy was watching and arrested Donald again, after he had only been free for 1 hour. This time, however, Donald's jail stay would not be as short. He was charged with attempted burglary. A judge set his bail at $10,000. He didn't have $10,000, so he is still in jail awaiting trial. Rob Hernandez thought the fuzzy little chick at the pet shop was the cutest thing he had ever seen. He had to buy it. He thought he was buying a baby duck, and he named his new pet Chaco. Chaco was loved and grew fast. Rob began to notice, however, that Chaco was growing too fast and getting too big. When Chaco made his first sound, Rob couldn't believe his ears. Rob expected a quack, but Chaco honked. Chaco was no duck. Chaco was a goose. Rob didn't reject Chaco, though. He kept him as long as he could. Chako was not a quiet goose. He made a lot of noise, honking all day and night. Rob's neighbors started to complain. Rob did not want to give Chako up, but he couldn't risk his neighbors calling the police on him either. Rob had to make a decision. Rob decided to take Chako to the nearby park that had a lake with other geese. Rob felt sad leaving Chako, and he was pretty sure his feathered friend felt sad too. Rob goes twice a week to the park to visit Chako so that both the goose and the owner are less sad. When Rob goes to visit, Chako swims across the lake right into Rob's arms. Sometimes Chako will even give Rob a little peck, a goose's way of giving a kiss. When Rob goes to visit, he always brings snacks for Chako. The other geese seemed to be jealous of all the attention Chako was getting, so now Rob brings enough bread for all the geese to share. Rob and Chako also play. Rob throws his former pet into the lake. Chako goes underwater, swims a little, and then returns to the shore so that Rob can throw him in again. Ever since Mary moved to the United States 1 year ago, she often heard the phrase, "no such thing as a free lunch." While she understood this to mean that you can't get something for nothing, she heard other mothers at her child's school talking about the free lunch program. "How much does it cost to enroll?" Mary asked the secretary at her child's school. The secretary smiled and told Mary that it didn't cost anything except a little bit of her time. In order to find out if Mary's child was qualified to get free lunch at school, she had to fill out a form. The form was available in many languages besides English. It asked Mary basic questions like where she lived, how many children she had, and what her annual income was. Filling out the form was easy, and Mary didn't have to include proof of her income. She was worried, though, if the information on the form would be shared with other agencies. The secretary told her that the information was not shared. If Mary made below a certain amount annually, her child could get free lunch, not just during the school year, but also even during the summer, when there was no school. Mary knew this would help her family. While Mary did work, she only worked part-time. Giving her child money for lunch every day did add up and impact the family budget. After filling out and submitting the form back to the school secretary, Mary had to wait a month or two before finding out if she was qualified. A few weeks after she submitted the form, a letter arrived in the mail. The letter informed her that her child was qualified. The letter also told her that her child could also get free breakfast in school. Tom noticed that every morning when he went to school, his mother would give him a letter to drop in the mailbox on the corner. "Who are you writing to so much?" he asked. "I'm just trying my luck," Tom's mother told him. A few weeks after Tom started mailing out the letters, he noticed that his mother was getting a lot more mail. Some of the mail advertised on the envelope that she might already be a winner. His mother was also getting many more magazines. Some of the magazines were about things his mother didn't even care about, like cats. "Mom, why are you getting so many magazines?" Tom asked her. She told him that she had been entering contests and that part of the process included subscribing to magazines. "It will increase my chances of winning the jackpot," she told him. Soon the family mailbox was filled with more contests, announcements, magazines, and bills. Tom's mother was surprised. She didn't think that checking off the boxes of magazines that looked interesting and affixing stickers to the return forms would cost her. She was spending more and more money and hadn't won anything. She wanted to be like the people in the commercials she saw on television. People bringing balloons and oversized checks surprised those people who entered the contests. Tom read the fine print. The magazines weren't free, and Tom's mother was not increasing her chances of winning anything by subscribing. Tom did some research and found out there had even been lawsuits against the companies running the contests and selling magazine subscriptions. Tom's mother felt bad. "It pays to win, Mom, but you can't pay to win," Tom told her. Tom's mother wondered what she was going to do with all these magazines. Nancy Scott just turned 21 last October. She was excited about finally being able to go to concerts that were strictly 21 and over. She decided that she would go to Las Vegas for her first concert. Jennifer, Nancy's sister, decided to go along with her because she didn't want her sister to go alone and get lost. Jennifer called her friends Matt and Jake, and they all decided to make the drive to Las Vegas. As they arrived in Las Vegas, they parked their car in the parking lot of the hotel that they were staying in. Nancy took a shower, and then Jennifer took one. They got dressed and then met both Matt and Jake in the lobby of the hotel. Nancy was so excited, she asked her sister if she wanted to get a drink. Jennifer agreed and said, "Okay, but only one." Jennifer bought her sister a giant drink that came in a 4-foot-tall cup, and she got the same. Nancy couldn't believe how big the drink was. "It's almost as tall as me," Nancy said. Jennifer laughed and took a drink from her cup. Matt and Jake arrived first at the place where the concert was going to be. They called the sisters and told them where to meet them. Nancy was excited to see the concert because one of her favorite bands was playing. As they got in line to get in, Jennifer went to the restroom. When Jennifer was getting back to her friends and sister, she met one of the members of the band named Jill. Jennifer told Jill about Nancy coming all the way to Las Vegas to see the show, and if she could do something special for her. Jill smiled and said sure. She reached into her purse and gave Jennifer 4 backstage passes. Jennifer hugged Jill and said thank you. Jennifer ran back to Nancy and told her to close her eyes. When Jennifer told Nancy to open her eyes, she was holding up the backstage passes in front of Nancy. Nancy began jumping up and down with joy. James Baker was only 12 years old when his parents decided to move the family to a new town. At first, James was heartbroken because he had to leave his friends behind. His mother told James that it would be okay and that he would make new friends. When James and his family finally arrived at their new home, they decided to go out to meet the neighbors. It was a typical American suburban neighborhood. Every house had a big lawn in the front, with a walkway leading up to the door. James felt uncomfortable, and he didn't want to meet the neighbors. The first house they went to belonged to an elderly couple. They seemed nice, but they didn't have any kids that were James's age. The next house they visited had bicycles parked by the garage door, so James thought kids of his age might live there. James knocked on the door, and a young girl named Linda answered. James became nervous. He let his mother do the talking. Linda's parents weren't home, but she told James's mother that they would go visit when they got home. Linda smiled at James, said goodbye, and closed the door. As they were walking back to their house next door, James looked back and noticed Linda was looking at him through the window. James looked at her, and Linda smiled. When they got home, James went to his new room. He took a look outside his window and noticed that he could see Linda in her room. He couldn't help looking at her. He thought she was the prettiest girl he had ever seen. As James was looking at her, he heard his mother calling. "I'll go downstairs in a moment, Mom," James said as he turned away from the window. When James looked back to Linda, she was staring right at him. James fell down to the floor and said in a whisper, "Oh no, I hope she didn't see me. Oh, please, please." Linda saw him and laughed. She thought James was cute. My best friend's name is Joseph Taylor, but he prefers to be called Joe. He does a lot of stupid stuff, and it usually gets him in trouble. The other day, while he was trying to impress some girls, he fell off his skateboard and broke his arm. Joe had to get his arm in a cast. He told me it was worth it. He had already gotten 3 phone numbers from the girls he was trying to impress. I always love Joe coming over to my house because it makes my day more exciting. After he showed me his arm, Joe asked me if I wanted to go to the mall. "Sure, why not?" I said. I asked my mom for permission, and she said yes. When we got to the mall, Joe wanted to get something to eat, so we went to McDonald's. We got 2 hamburgers and 2 sodas, and then we went walking around the mall. For some reason, Joe always liked stealing things from the stores at the mall. I never understood why he stole the things he did. For example, that day he stole 3 keychains, 5 pairs of socks, and a t-shirt of a television show that he had never heard of. Joe always said the same thing when he got out of the store. I love the rush of stealing. I always looked at him, shook my head, and called him an idiot. The worst was yet to come. When we were leaving the mall to go catch the bus, a security guard grabbed Joe and me by the shoulders and told us we couldn't leave. The security guard took us to his office and called our parents. I was worried because I knew my dad would yell at me. Joe, on the other hand, was laughing and was telling me jokes. When our parents showed up to pick us up, Joe looked at me smiling and said, "See you in a couple of months." I looked at him, shook my head, and called him an idiot. Michael Hall always loved playing basketball with his brother Scott. They lived next to a park, and they went to play basketball at the park every day. Michael was a junior at his college, and Scott was a freshman. They both tried out for the college team, but were so nervous during the tryouts that they didn't make it. One day, while they were playing basketball, Michael noticed that a guy was watching them play. When Michael and Scott finished playing, the guy who was watching them went up to Michael. "You guys have some skills," the guy said. Michael finally realized who the man was. It was Charles King, a famous basketball player. Charles told them that he used to play basketball at that park too when he was younger. Charles asked them if they played for school or if they had a team with friends. They said they didn't make it into their school's team. "I never made it onto my school's basketball team either," Charles said. Charles asked the brothers if they wanted to play a game of 2-on-1. They happily said yes. Charles won, of course, but he told the brothers that they were really good. Charles then told the brothers that he was starting a basketball camp at his old high school, and if they were interested, they could join it for free. The brothers had heard about it and said that they would love to join. "We just have to ask our mothers," Scott said. Charles laughed and said, "Of course, you don't want to get Mom mad." The 2 brothers ran back home, and they told their mom about what had happened in the park. She told them that they could join as long as they kept up with their homework and their classes. The brothers agreed and went back to the park to practice. Robert Lee and his brothers were excited about the new Godzilla movie that was coming out. The day the movie came out, Robert and his brothers went to the theater early. Robert's brothers wanted to see another movie first, and then they wanted to sneak into Godzilla. Robert didn't mind because he liked going to the movies. When they got to the theater, Robert bought his brothers popcorn, soda, and some candy. When they got everything, they went to find their seats. Robert's brothers didn't like the first movie they watched, but they were excited to see Godzilla. Robert went to get more soda and popcorn because his brothers had finished all of it. Robert's brothers snuck into the theater, and they were waiting for Robert to come back with the snacks. When Robert tried to go back in to see Godzilla, a security guard asked him for his ticket. Robert didn't have one for Godzilla, so the security guard had to kick him out. Robert had to go outside and buy another ticket for Godzilla. He felt embarrassed because he had to stand in line with the popcorn and soda. The people in line and the people who worked in the ticket booth looked at Robert and found him funny. Robert knew that they were looking at him because they knew he got kicked out for trying to sneak into another movie. His face turned red. He thought about calling his brothers to get out so that they could go home. Robert thought about how his brothers wanted to see the movie too, and so he bought the ticket and went back in. The security guard looked at him again and asked him for his ticket. Robert showed it to him, and they went into the theater. The security guard laughed. It was a hot day in Clarksville. The children in the neighborhood were sweating and wanted to do something refreshing. The pool was closed because they were building something new in it. They thought about what they could do to escape the heat, but they never could agree on doing the same thing. That's when Christopher Baker decided to go to the store. He bought 10 bags of balloons and went to his house to fill them up with water. He invited his 2 best friends, Joseph and Patrick, to help him out. By the time they finished, they had 5 buckets of water balloons. They went outside with the buckets and put them in the center of Joseph's lawn and started throwing them to the children in the neighborhood. At first the other children were surprised, but then they wanted to get wetter. They all went to the store and bought some balloons for themselves. Christopher and his friends went back into the house to make more balloons. When they got back outside, they were attacked with 10 different water balloons. Christopher and his friends started laughing when they realized where the other boys were. They decided to hide. Christopher gave the orders to his friends. He told Joseph to hide behind his dad's car. He told Patrick to hide behind his mom's car. They each took 4 water balloons with them. Christopher told them to wait for his signal, and then they could throw the balloons. Christopher knew where 3 of the boys were hiding, so he went running and attacked them with 5 water balloons. Christopher then ran back to the place where he was hiding, but the boys were coming after him. Christopher yelled out, "Now!" Joseph and Patrick came out of hiding and attacked the boys with their water balloons. The boys went back. Christopher and his friends started laughing. It was the beginning of summer. David Lopez's dad wanted him to get a summer job. David had just finished school and was looking forward to enjoying his time off school. He wanted to sleep late, he wanted to play video games, and he wanted to spend time with his friends. David's dad decided that he would get a job for David. When he came home, he handed David a uniform for the Burger Hut. David was sad because he didn't want to work at the Burger Hut. He knew all of his friends went there, and he knew that his friends would make fun of him. David knew that his dad was able to get him this job because the owner was his dad's friend. The owner's name is Michael. David didn't really like him that much. David had the first day at work. Everyone that worked at the Burger Hut had to wear a hat. David's hat fell into the oil where they made the fries. Michael had to get it out with a big spoon. After a week had passed by, David seemed to be getting used to working at the Burger Hut. Michael was impressed with how hard David worked, and told him he could take the day off. During his day off, David went out with his friends. They went to the park and played some basketball, and then his friends decided to go get something to eat. David asked them where they wanted to go. They said they wanted to go to eat at the Burger Hut. David tried to convince them to go somewhere else, but his friends really wanted to go to the Burger Hut. When they got to the Burger Hut, David put on his sweater and his hat and sat down in the far corner of the restaurant and tried to hide himself from his co-workers and his boss. When his friends got their food, they went to sit down with David. Michael came out and saw David. He went up to him and said, "You just can't get enough of this place, huh, David?" Michael chuckled and then left. David's friends took a bite out of their burgers and looked at David. "You work here?" one of David's friends asked. His other friend looked at him and said, "Can you get me a job?" David smiled and nervously said, "I'll try." It's been 6 months since Jason White's parents were officially divorced. At first, Jason was sad. He thought that it was his fault that his parents had gotten divorced. One day, while Jason was at his dad's new apartment, he asked his dad a question. "Why did you get divorced with Mom, Dad?" Jason asked. His dad didn't want to talk about it. He told Jason that he would understand when he was older. The following day, Jason went back home with his mother. During the car ride, he asked his mother the same question. "Why did you get divorced with Dad, Mom?" Jason asked. She told Jason the same thing his father had told him. Jason didn't understand why they couldn't tell him the reason. He was 10 years old, but he felt like he was still 6. A week had passed since Jason asked his parents the question. Things weren't looking good for his parents. His mom would cry, and his dad would always be mad. Jason began getting angry with his parents. One day after school, Jason decided to go over to his friend Matt's house. He asked Matt if he could sleep over for a couple of days. Matt said yes, so Jason went to get some clothes from his house before his mom got home. Jason went back to Matt's house. He told Matt not to tell Matt's mom and his mom that he was staying there. He didn't want anyone to know that he was there. Matt agreed. At around midnight, Jason's mom called Matt's mom to ask if Jason had stopped by. As Matt didn't tell his mom said no. The following day, Jason saw that the police were looking for him. His mother and father had called the police. Matt began to get worried because he didn't want to lie to the police. He called Jason's parents and told them that Jason was at his house. When Jason's parents arrived at Matt's house, Jason wanted to leave through the window. Matt told him that his parents were worried sick and that he had to go back. His parents came into Matt's room and saw Jason. They ran to him and hugged him. Jason's dad turned to his ex-wife and gave her a big hug and kiss. Jason felt happy but confused.